Some politicians say enough is enough. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Canada is Gotham and the country needs a Batman. Some politicians are saying crime is out of control and it's time to crack down. Fresh off his by-election win in the riding of Battle River Crowfoot, the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, has been on a tour of British Columbia. And in Surrey, Poilievre signaled the Conservatives plan to make crime and public safety a major issue when Parliament resumes in the middle of September. Surrey, British Columbia is home to one of the largest South Asian communities in Canada, and it's having a problem with extortion rackets run by an organized crime group based out of India, the Bishnoi Gang. It's named for an Indian national, Lawrence Bishnoi, who's one of India's most notorious gangsters. He's been housed in an Indian prison since 2014, but still runs his operation out of that prison, and his operatives in Canada are known to target business owners with threats of violence if they don't pay up. Pierre Poilievre wants the Bishnoi Gang to be declared a terrorist organization.
We're calling on the government to immediately list the Bishnoi Gang as a terrorist organization. The Bishnoi Gang has been terrorizing communities, shooting up neighborhoods, extorting our people, and taking the money out of our country. There's evidence now that their violence is linked to terror and to political motivations. This is why numerous mayors and premiers, including Mayor Patrick Brown from Brampton, have called for this group to be listed as a terrorist body. Doing so would allow police to arrest anyone who raises money, organizes, plans, does logistics or recruitment, and put those people in jail, or if they are non-Canadians, kick them out of this country.
The Bishnoi Gang is believed to be responsible for trying to kill Kapil Sharma, a well-known comedian and cafe owner in Surrey. He was shot at twice in 1 month. A car wash in Surrey was also targeted after the owner refused to pay $50,000. And it's believed the Bishnoi Gang was involved in the murder of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Poilievre outlined a number of other tough-on-crime policies he says his party will press for in the coming months, including mandatory minimum sentences.
We are calling for jail and not bail by repealing Liberal Law C-75 and Liberal Law C-5, that we will ensure that we are calling for jail and not bail by repealing Liberal Law C-75 and Liberal Law C-5, that we will ensure that offenders who engage in extortion go to jail. They are not automatically released again and again through the revolving door. Finally, we're calling for the adoption of our Deputy Leader Tim Uppal's bill making mandatory prison sentences for extortion. First offense will be minimum 4 years. If it's with a gun, it will be 5 years and up to 7, and it will be an aggravating offense if the extortion involves the use of fire.
The Conservative leader's also taking a hard line on judges who take a person's immigration status into consideration during sentencing, saying the Conservatives are going to table a bill that would end that practice.
She's bringing in a bill saying that immigration status should not be used by judges to reduce the sentences of convicted criminals. You know, the other day we had a judge who said, well, this individual is a non-Canadian, and if they get a high conviction, they'll be deported from the country. Well, that's what we want. If someone commits a crime when they're here as a visitor, we want them to do a sentence in prison and then get the hell out of Canada. We don't want to keep criminals in our streets. We don't want to invite criminals to our country. Every single criminal who visits our country and is a non-Canadian should be quickly deported from our country.
Meanwhile, in Ontario, the premier of the province isn't happy, Doug Ford, about the story of about a man in the town of Lindsay, not far from Peterborough, who's been charged after beating another man who broke into his apartment at 3 o'clock in the morning. The suspect in that case was out on probation at the time and wanted on other charges. The victim of the break-and-enter is facing charges as well, aggravated assault and assault with a weapon, because the intruder was beaten so badly he had to be airlifted to hospital. But Doug Ford's having none of it.
So this criminal that's wanted by the police breaks into this guy's house. This guy gives him a beating, and this guy gets charged. And the other guy gets charged. But, something is broken. I know if someone breaks into my house or someone else's, you're going to fight for your life. This guy has a weapon. You're going to use any force you possibly can to protect your family. I'm telling you, I know everyone would. I'd be scared to break into Kevon's house. Look at this, he's like a linebacker. He'd beat the living crap out of the guy, as he should. Because enough's enough here. Violence and breaking into people's homes, putting guns to their heads. And guess what? Some bleeding heart judge, little Johnny, he didn't have a good upbringing. So we're going to let him out on bail 5 more times because he's on his 5th, being let out on bail 5 times, just to go do the same thing the next day. I'll tell you one thing. I get more calls than anyone in the country. People are done with this.
That sentiment that people are done with this came through loud and clear yesterday on this radio show. Listeners were calling in about that case in Lindsay to Talkback.
I would like to know how the judges, the prosecutors, and the police involved, what their reaction would be. Would they say, oh, that's okay, go ahead and steal? We'll just slap your wrist and turn you out next week. From what I understand, this is a habitual criminal. No, he didn't go too far. He didn't go far enough.
So what this guy did, he's a hero in my books. I would do whatever I have to do to protect my home.
Hopefully I wouldn't, go to shoot the person with lethal intentions, but he's getting maimed. Hopefully our fellow Canadians might step up and help pay for that injustice of the court system.
I can't wrap my head around the possibility that this guy got charged.
You're going to use the force that you feel at that moment with all the adrenaline that's going through you to kind of put that force down until you are sure that you are safe and able to protect your family.
There's been no response from anyone in the Carney government to anything these conservative politicians are saying about crime and public safety. The only significant announcement recently from the public safety minister has been about his intention to press ahead with the gun buyback program for so-called assault-style firearms at a cost of more than $740 million. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
And he's my friend on the right side of things. Michael Taube is with us every week, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Welcome back.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing this afternoon?
Oh, we're just great. Thank you very much. So one of the big political stories of the week, of course, is Pierre Poilievre had done what he needed to do. He's won the by-election convincingly in Battle River Crowfoot, more than 80% of the vote. So now, what now? What does Pierre Poilievre need to do, in your opinion, to mount a serious challenge to Prime Minister Mark Carney and make the Conservatives competitive in the run-up to the next election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot was no surprise to anyone who has a little bit of sense and recognized that the history of that riding has been overwhelmingly voting for Conservative candidates, and in the end, Pierre Poilievre got very close to what Damien Curec got in a general election. To do that in a by-election, especially running against 213 other candidates, most of whom were part of this longest ballot committee nonsense, that's actually a really good showing overall as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, now you're on to the next stage. And the next stage is they go back to Parliament reconvenes in the fall, and Mr. Poilievre will replace Andrew Scheer, who performed admirably as the interim leader for a spell, and everything then sort of moves forward. The trick is obviously Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberals are sort of getting closer to the end of what we know as the political honeymoon period, which can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months, 4 to 6 months, upwards of 7, 8. It all depends, but it's getting close to the end. His numbers are obviously fairly high if you believe the polls. Obviously, Mr. Poilievre is a far better communicator than the Prime Minister of this country is, and he obviously is very successful when he does it, not just outside of Parliament, but inside. So the policies he's going to have to go after will probably range in total from attacking the government record, the impending fall economic statement, which is estimated to be around $486 billion, which is just insane and probably will be higher at the end of it. He has to go after them with spending. He has to go after them in terms of free trade or trade relations with the United States. The fact that he sold many Canadians a bad deal, claiming that he could be the one who will, quote unquote, tame Donald Trump. Tame being a line that I used and others used as being nonsensical, and that was proven to be nonsense. So you can do that. He's also talked about issues specifically, including dealing with electric vehicles is one thing I think he's going to go after, which is something new. He's going to look after, crime rates as well, where he's going to get very tough on it. A conservative policy to be sure, but one that needs to be emphasized even more. So sort of running the gamut in that direction.
Okay, let's face it, Pierre Poilievre needed a lot of favors in order to get back into the House of Commons. I mean, he needed to find an MP who had just won a seat in the election. Unlike Poilievre, Damien Carrick won in Battle River Crowfoot in the general election. Damien Carrick was gracious enough to step aside to create an opening. And then he needed Mark Carney to not wait 6 months to call that by-election. And Mark Carney, true to his word, said he would not mess around and call it as soon as possible. And here we go. Poilievre will be back in the House of Commons in the middle of September. I'm just wondering, I mean, this is humbling. This would be humbling to be on the cusp of forming a government, becoming prime minister, only to see it all slip away and lose your own riding that you had been elected in 7 times. Do you think this has changed him or humbled him in any way? Do you think we'll hear a different kind of tone from Pierre Poilievre in the future?
You'll hear differences in tone, but I don't regard this as a humbling experience. It's certainly an eye-waking. It wakes you up. It's eye-opening for sure, and obviously it's something to think about. The fact that Mark Carney was gracious enough not to play politics with the by-election, I respected that, and I said so in a column too, and others have as well. I think Damien Carrick obviously deserves a lot of credit. He was not forced out while, there were some people who sort of tried to privately, well, maybe he was. No, he wasn't. Because believe me, Damien Carrick was nice and set in Battle River Crowfoot. He's very young. He had just won his 3rd election. He's getting close to the point where he was going to collect a pension, even though he said publicly, and said it even before the election, that it didn't matter to him all that much. It was decent what he did. It was very gracious, or as Pierre Poilievre said, and the direct quote was selfless, and I agree with all that. But on the other hand, recognizing what happened and how unfortunate it was, and the fact that he had to run a by-election after, Carleton, his long-held riding, opted to go for the Liberal candidate, Bruce Fanjoy, the end result is you take that knowledge, you take that experience, but you still have to build it into messaging, which has traditionally been Poilievre's strong suit. So the recognition that, there was a bump in the road. I acknowledge it. I know what happened, but we've overcome it. And with the help of Battle River Crowfoot residents, I am back in Parliament. I owe them everything. I will be, a strong champion for their points of view, their ideas, and their policies, and to move forward in that direction.
Okay, when we come back, we'll ask Michael what he thinks the showing of the Alberta separatist candidates in that by-election says about the separatist movement in Alberta right now. When we come back with Michael Taube, speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, syndicated columnist, with us every Thursday. You're on Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
We're back with Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Not much of a showing for the Alberta separatist candidates in the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. What do you think that says about the strength or the momentum of the separatist forces in Alberta, Michael?
Well, obviously there's no denial that it exists, and obviously it has the support of some residents throughout the West, including in Alberta. The fact that there were 2 candidates who ran against them and both got, like most of the others, quite frankly, in Battle River Crowfoot, got clobbered in the by-election on Monday. What it basically shows is that, yes, it exists. Yes, it's something that needs to be dealt with. by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, and other provinces that are affected by it, such as, Saskatchewan and its Premier Scott Moe. But at the same time, it doesn't have the momentum that I think some of its supporters have suggested and some of the media have tried to promote to some degree. It's there. It has to be dealt with. You have to listen to them. You have to try and reason with them and see if there can be a solution. But in terms of, suddenly changing the nature of this country, or Alberta is going to separate from Canada, based on this, which, again, we know it's obviously Battle River Crowfoot, as I said off the top of our segment, is a very safe Conservative riding, one of the safest in all of Canada. They like the Conservative Party. They like Conservative candidates. They like the Conservative leader, who they just obviously elected in a by-election. But the separatist movement, which does go through Battle River Crowfoot, is at least, if nothing else, an isolated example that the separatist movement, or independence movement, if you'd like, in the West, is only going to go so far.
Okay. So there is this narrative now that Poilievre will be back in the House. There'll be, question periods. The government will have to present a budget. It will, likely have a big budget deficit, these sorts of things. And that the race, such as it is right now, will narrow, and the honeymoon will soon be coming to an end for Mark Carney. Is that
Correct.
how you see it? That's how you
Yes,
see it?
I mean, we sort of basically talked on the first thing. Political honeymoons can last anywhere from 4 to 6 months, 3 to 6, or a little bit more than 6. It just depends. But yes, it is getting closer to the point where people are not going to necessarily look away from the Liberal government, as some are doing. Some are happy with it. Some are just going with the flow, which is fine. And now that Pierre Poilievre is back in Parliament, or will be back in Parliament in the fall, his public profile will rebuild. He'll be shown in news clips a lot more, whereas, for the last few months, he's been in Alberta, obviously fighting to get that seat, or ensuring that he gets that seat. So yes, I mean, the Mark Carney's days of sort of floating along, which again, lots of prime ministers obviously have in their first little while, that's going to come to an end. And then the key is going to be, as we talked about, whether Poilievre's agenda, policies, and other things will make some serious dents in Carney's lead.
Okay. Great to hear from you today, Michael, as always. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, my friend. Have a nice week.
Speak soon. That's Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Coming up next, Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Well, he's with us every week as well with his take on some of the big news stories of the day. He's usually here on Tuesdays, but Thursday works too. I'm not sure where we've reached him today. I thought we were going to be calling in Whistler, British Columbia. But Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business, where have we tracked you down today? Professor Lee?
Hi,
are you there?
How's that? Driving, I've got a new car. It's 3 years old. It's got all the whistles and all the bells, and I'm really happy.
Okay. And where are you? Sorry?
I am driving down the highway around near Montreal.
Oh, near Montreal. Okay. All right. Well, hands-free, I hope. Hands-free.
Of course it is. It's got the latest electronics. I'm talking to a microphone in the roof of the car.
Oh, yes. It's all very fancy now. Yes, it's quite amazing. Welcome to the year 2015, Professor. Okay. Now, look, I want, Air Canada operations are going to resume, normally, hopefully by the end of business today. But I want to talk about Canada as a market for the airline industry. We have seen so many airlines fail in Canada over the years, and we've heard it more than once. More competition would be great for travelers. I came up with a list today. These are all the airlines that have come and gone in Canada just since 1990. Canada 3000, Roots Air, Jets Go, Zoom Airlines, Tango, Zip, CanJet, Lynx Air, Swoop. I mean, it's a long list. Why is it so hard for Canadian airlines to get off the ground?
I argue, and I certainly studied this for a very long time because I study competition policy. I've spoken before the House of Commons Finance Committee on this. And we have about a third of our industries in Canada have some form of protectionism. Protectionism from what? From outside competition. I know there's probably quite a few Canadians who think that's a wonderful thing. I have long argued that protectionism is an Orwellian term for something that is very vicious and pernicious and destructive, because protectionism reduces or eliminates foreign competition so that the remaining 2 or 3 firms in the industry can drive prices up and exploit 40 million Canadians with higher prices. With airlines specifically, the entire system that we've created over the years, the federal government, and to be honest, mostly liberal governments, because they've been in power for 75 of the last 100 years, have created a system that protects the incumbents. The incumbents are Air Canada and WestJet. And so through a whole manner of ways, it has done so. It has created a series of rules and policies that have the effect, as I said, of giving advantages to Air Canada and to WestJet. So I argue that these companies that have been started up were doomed to fail because it's a rigged market. Rigged meaning government policy tilts the playing field. It's not a level playing field. And so that's why they failed, is because they're not competing on the same level as Air Canada and WestJet, whether it's getting slots at airports or a whole range of policies in the airline industry. And remember, transportation is an exclusive federal responsibility. The provinces and municipalities have no authority whatsoever. It's exclusively federal, and they are the ones that run this through DOT, and they run NAVCAN, and of course they own the airports, the land under which the airport sits on. And of course they're the landlord to these municipal nonprofit airports. So I blame the government of Canada.
Okay, so if you were writing airline policy to encourage more competition, to get more players into the market, give me something you would change. What would you change? Would you change foreign ownership rules, for example, foreign investment rules?
Number one, I would change the foreign investment rules. I've had these debates with professors who say, don't you understand this part of our Canadian identity? I said, listen, I've flown on Aeroflot in Russia. I didn't become Russian and start speaking Russian because I flew on a Russian airline. I fly on Chinese airlines and I don't speak Chinese. I fly on Air France and I don't speak French. I fly on Lufthansa and I don't speak German. The idea that I'm suddenly going to lose my Canadian identity because I go into a foreign store called Walmart, which is foreign American owned, or Target, or I fly on a foreign airline, I'm going to lose my Canadian identity, is part of the propaganda that Canadians have been taught for years and years and years. And it is inaccurate. So that's number one, but it doesn't stop there. We'll talk about this after the break, I believe. I would privatize the municipal airports across Canada that are the most unaccountable organizations in Canada. I'm talking the Ottawa Airport Authority, the Toronto Airport Authority, and so forth. And we can talk more about after the break about why that is so pernicious and harmful to our country. That's two. Number three, I would allow...
When we come back, so why don't we stop right here? And whether you think the government is thinking about doing that. Because this did not get a lot of attention at the time, but there was a policy statement back on March 7th from Transport Canada about the need to attract new investment into Canada's airports. And, we've talked about airport authorities in the past and how the fees for the airlines to be stationed at these airports via the airport authorities, those fees keep going up and up and up, and those are, of course, are reflected in the prices that we pay for airline tickets. So we'll be right back. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Given all the Air Canada news this week, we are talking about the airline industry. Kind of from 10,000 feet up, if you will, with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Airport authorities. You say you like the idea of privatizing airports, maybe moving away from the airport authority model into privatizing airports. On March 7th, the federal government had a policy statement. It said Canada's airports represent a major opportunity for private investors, especially the Canadian market, by attracting new private partners such as pension funds. Canadian airports can speed up their growth plans and improve the passenger experience. What do you think of that?
I am completely in agreement, although Mr. Chrétien, former Prime Minister Chrétien, did a lot of good things in his time as Prime Minister, most importantly dealing with the largest deficit in Canadian history. The one major mistake, I believe, was his decision to revoke the late-term decision by Mulroney, Prime Minister Mulroney, to privatize the airports. People may forget that Chrétien canceled the contract. The government of Canada had to pay $800 million for breach of contract. And so we did the worst of all possible solutions. The Europeans have privatized all their airports. If you can imagine, the great progressive Europe has privatized their airports, including Heathrow. The Americans have not privatized, nor did they send them down to the municipal level. They're under the strict control of the FAA and report through Congress. Lots of accountability, lots of scrutiny. In Canada, we went the absolute worst way. We devolved them to non-profit municipal authorities that are accountable to absolutely nobody. So they can just jack those fees up left, right, and center, and there's no checks and no balances. They're completely out of control. We would never allow Enbridge, the gas company, the natural gas company, or Ontario Hydro to be able to increase their electricity rates without going to the Ontario Energy Board for permission. We don't have any such model. So what I'm arguing is if we want to get much better service, what we need to do is to privatize these airports as the Europeans did, and then possibly regulate them to ensure that we have much better service than we do now at these unaccountable, quasi-feudal authorities.
Okay, so what's your experience in, say, going through a privatized airport as, say, going through Pearson or the Ottawa airport or the Calgary airport or the Vancouver airport? Is the difference noticeable? And if so, how?
Yes. I have flown through, I believe, every Canadian airport that was turned into a municipal nonprofit. I've certainly flown through Heathrow and other airports at Charles de Gaulle and Frankfurt, and they are, I believe, streets ahead of in terms of efficiency. I'll give you a quick, for instance, that everybody will understand. I've also flown into Shanghai every year. My little joke is every time I fly into Shanghai, and I've been going there since '97, my luggage to the carousel has always got there before I got to the carousel. Okay? In Ottawa, for example, where I fly home to, it's where I live, I have always been to the carousel before my luggage, and it's a small airport that can take sometimes a half an hour. And it's because they just don't care. They don't have to care. They have a monopoly, and there's nothing you can do about it. And when you complain, they just shrug, and that's if they respond to your complaint. So there's no accountability. There's no sensitivity to the customer. And so the privatization would introduce the discipline of the market. I'm not suggesting they shouldn't be regulated. Possibly we need a regulatory body to oversee the airports to make sure they don't jack up their fees unnecessarily without justification. But the current model is failing, and the government of Canada, which is the landlord, is not willing to put more money into the airport. So the airports just jack up the fees so does Transport Canada. They jack up the rental fees on the land, and then these municipal airports jack up the fees to you and I. We have some of the highest fees.
Oh, I think we've lost Professor Lee. Okay, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there'll be pushback from the unions. Unifor released a statement when this statement came out from the federal government saying, if your goal is to improve a public service, pushing for privatization is the fastest way to fail. It would cut profit over. It would put profit over public safety, remove public accountability, and suppress wages and working conditions for people working at the airport. So there would be a lot of pushback from The unions,
Yeah,
for
but that's
example.
pure that's just pure ideological nonsense, Rob. I've flown in.
Okay, all right.
And to say that they're dangerous is just simply, I think it's dishonest to say that. Heathrow is not dangerous. Neither is Frankfurt. Neither is Charles de Gaulle. Neither is Schiphol. It is just simply dishonest for them to.
All right, just hang on, Professor. We'll put you on hold. We will take our break, and we'll see if we can get a clearer connection with you on your cell phone. Somewhere in the Montreal area, Professor Lee on the road today. We will be right back, try to reconnect with him. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Back with a few more minutes with Professor Ian Lee, who's on the road today. He's in the Montreal area. You are going back to work eventually, right? You will go back to work eventually?
I'm going to be working starting on Sunday and Monday, and I'm back in the classroom in 1 week from now. But, Rob, before we run out of time, I just want to respond to that deeply deceptive, in fact, that fraudulent allegation by Unifor. And everybody listening, this is fraudulent. The airline safety of Canada and the United States and Europe is not regulated by the airports. It is regulated by the FAA, which is the government of the United States in the U.S., the Federal Aviation Authority. The safety of air travel in Canada is not regulated by the Toronto or the Ottawa airport. It's regulated by Transport Canada's regulatory body. Likewise, the European. So when Unifor says that they're less safe, they're saying that the safety is a function of who owns the airport. This is flat out false, deceptive, dishonest, and fraudulent. It is not true. It is absolutely not true. And anybody listening at Unifor, if they want to contact me, I will send them the name of the statute of the Act of Canada that passes past the regulatory framework.
All right. Since you'll be back teaching at Carleton University in about a week or so, I want to ask you two questions very quickly. We only have about 3 minutes or so. Is university worth it? And who shouldn't go to university?
It's interesting you just asked that question. I've just finished literally a study I'm working on looking at StatsCan data, average income by field of study is what the StatsCan people call it. It really means your degree. And whereas if you go back 30 or 40 years ago, the labor markets did not distinguish between a BA in history or philosophy or business or engineering. Today, the labor markets, this isn't theory, this is hard data from the actual wage markets. The STEM graduates, engineering and sciences, are earning the largest premium for their undergraduate degree. Social sciences still earn a premium, but not as much as the STEM graduates. So social sciences are, political science and sociology and that sort of thing. The people that are getting hurt the most, and they won't like it, they'll get angry at me for saying this, but this is hard StatsCan data, are the humanities. The humanities are now earning an average income pretty close to a grade 12 graduate. In other words, the labor markets are not giving them a wage premium any longer for a degree in the humanities. So to answer your question, it depends on which degree you complete. A STEM degree will generate the biggest returns and is the most lucrative for the graduate. Social science graduates are in the middle, and humanities are being hit hard because the markets are not recognizing their degree in terms of dollars paid in annual salaries as they once were recognized.
Okay, so in a minute or less then, I mean, it's not for everybody. University's not for everybody. Who shouldn't be there?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I'm not one of these people that say everybody should go to university. We desperately need tradespeople. We desperately need plumbers. We need electricians. We need drywall, pipe fitters, HVAC people. And unfortunately, for the last 50 years, our system has sneered and looked down on people that work with their hands or work in the trades. And so I would suggest to a lot of people listening, or the parents, talk to your sons and daughters about maybe going into the trades. The salary salaries are going through the roof. There's a revaluation going on in labor markets as I speak. The trades are making a lot more money, and people with social science and humanities degrees are making they're seeing a depreciation in their average income. So my answer is look at going into the trades with one of the community colleges.
Okay. Safe travels in your fancy new wheels. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks a lot, Rob. Bye.
Bye-bye. Professor Ian Lee. He's like a Stompin' Tom song, that guy. He's been everywhere. Never know where you're going to track him down. Talkback is coming up next. Crime and public safety. We're going to talk about crime and public safety again on Talkback today. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic is crime and public safety. And with your help, our hope is that we'll have kind of a freewheeling discussion today on the whole topic of crime and public safety. You know, we've heard from various politicians in recent days announcing plans and policies, expressing frustrations about the situation in this country with crime and public safety. The public safety minister, Gary Anandasangri, has told 2 Ottawa-based news outlets now that the Carney government plans to move ahead with a very expensive gun buyback program for so-called assault-style firearms, $740 million price tag. We talked about that a couple of days ago, and most of you didn't seem to think it would do much for the gun crime problem in the country. Most of you said it would have little to no effect at all, and in fact would be a giant waste of money. And then we heard from Premier Doug Ford yesterday of Ontario, very upset that a man in Lindsay, Ontario, is facing a serious assault charge for beating up another man who broke into his apartment at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, the man who broke into the apartment has a long rap sheet, was out on probation, was wanted on other charges at the time. We took so many calls on that story yesterday, we couldn't fit them all in. In fact, if you want to pick up right where we left off yesterday with that story, feel free to do so at 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. If you wanted to be heard yesterday but didn't have a chance, take your call on that story again today. And now we've heard from the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, yesterday in Surrey, British Columbia. Campaign stop, I would say campaign style stop following the by-election, deliberately chosen because Surrey is one of the communities in Canada, along with Brampton, that is most affected by this India-based organized crime ring, the Bishnoi gang, that has been running a protection racket in Canada, threatening people and shooting people and burning down people's homes and burning down people's businesses. And you have people legitimately living in fear. But in addition to all of that, all you have to do is just look at the headlines on any given day and kind of think, what the heck is going on with crime in this country? You know, the headlines just today, 1 dead, 1 injured after double shooting in Brampton. Funeral for 8-year-old shooting victim to be held in Northern Ontario. That's the story about Javai Roy, 8 years old, just sleeping in his bed in an apartment building in Toronto. Gunfire erupts in the neighborhood. He's hit by a stray bullet. 8 years old in bed. And the police, as far as I know, still haven't made any arrests in that case. News in Calgary. 13-year-old girl, 2 11-year-olds. 11 years old. 13 years old. Arrested after Calgary bus driver has weapon pointed at him. They had I gather, a replica handgun, like little gangster wannabes. Man accused in London, Ontario shooting pledges 1 penny in successful bid for bail. 1 penny. 1 penny. 1 penny, and he's out on bail. Okay. Police seeking 2 suspects in Markham shooting. 21-year-old charged with attempted murder following a shooting in Paradise, Newfoundland. 18 and 19-year-olds arrested in connection with a Etobicoke shooting. Suspects sought in drive-by shooting in Peterborough. 4 teens arrested after man kidnapped and assaulted in Windsor. Man accused of killing, dismembering 2 people in Barrie. I mean, on and on and on the headlines read like that on an almost daily basis. It's actually easy to become desensitized to it after you read so many stories like that. Because news stories about crime and violent crime, they at least seem to be so commonplace. So why don't we start with a few questions? Try to focus the conversation a little bit. But here's a big one. Do you have faith in the criminal justice system? Do you have faith in the police? Do you have faith in the courts? Faith in our judges? Do you have faith in the criminal justice system that if you're a victim of crime, that the crime will be investigated, that the perpetrators, if they're nabbed, that they will be held accountable? Or are you losing faith in the justice system? Or have you lost faith in the justice system? And if so, why? If so, why? 1-833-668-2577. Do you think crime is getting worse? Where you live, do you think crime is getting worse? And offer some examples. Like, what kind of crime is getting worse? And of course, another one. If you think crime is getting worse, what do you want the government to do about it? What kind of policies would you support? For example, not a lot of support from our callers a couple of days ago for this $740 million gun buyback program. So if the government wants to get tough on crime, make communities safer, what do you think the government should be doing? For example, would you be in favor of hiring more police officers, even if it means you pay higher property taxes? Should we be building new jails? Should we be building new prisons? Should we be having mandatory minimum sentences, especially for gun crimes? Where do you stand on that? The Harper government passed some laws, imposed mandatory minimum sentences. Judges didn't like them. Activists took the matter to court and won. Some of those laws were struck down, unconstitutional. What if another government tried to bring laws like that back? Just want to kick it around for a couple of hours with your help today on Talkback. Crime, public safety, the justice system, certainly all over the news. You have faith in the justice system? You think crime is getting worse? If it's getting worse, what do you want the government to do? 1-833-668-2577. That's our call-in line for Talkback. If you've never called before, just mention that to us, and we'll make your call a priority. I'm Rob Snow. We'd love to hear from you today. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about crime, public safety, the justice system today. Do you have faith in the justice system? Do you think crime is getting worse? If you think crime is getting worse, what do you want the government to do? 1-833-668-2577. There are 3 lines available there for you. Let's go to Ian, first-time caller in Southern Ontario. Hello, Ian.
Good afternoon.
Yes, hi, Ian. What would you say? Do you have faith in the justice system?
The legal system, which propagates an industry of crime. We have apathetic police, soft-bellied judges, and greedy prosecutors who are just interested in having their conviction rate skyrocket. I was a victim of crime. It was a contract hit. I was attacked early in the morning. I came out shooting because there were multiple attackers, and I was charged. I spent 2.5 years at trial, $65,000 in legal fees to be acquitted. I'm a proponent
and
an avid supporter of concealed carry for lawful Canadians, and I'm not saying that everybody should have the right to carry, but those who are trained, vetted properly, should have the right to carry. And statistically, when you have a community where firearms are allowed, crime rate plummets.
Okay. All right. Okay. It's too bad. 1-833, he was telling an interesting story there. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Who do we have up next here? Brian, first-time caller in Calgary. Hello, Brian. Hi, Brian. Yeah, hi, Brian. Yeah, good to hear from you today. Do you have faith in the justice system? Do you think crime is getting worse?
Yeah, and it will get a lot worse. It starts with the support in the United States. Like they have trained Canada on how to distract everybody with all kinds of ridiculousness, like all kinds of crime reports. And Carney is doing the same thing that the United States has always done. He's padding his own pocket, and he's not thinking about the voters at all. He's learned that from the United States.
Okay, I don't really follow you, sir. Can you maybe unpack that a little bit for me? I'm unclear what you mean.
The whole system is corrupt. Like I follow this stuff religiously, and it seems like everybody is after the money, or either that, or if they're trying to change laws to suit themselves, and they've been doing it since 1973. Ever since they started messing around with and the gold.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of talking, at the community level about crime and public safety and the justice system. I'm talking about things like, break and enters and vehicle thefts or other kinds of property crime. Things like this.
Yeah, well,
carjackings, assaults.
I think the cops had dropped the ball a long time ago.
Okay.
The United States turned to crime, and now Canada's doing the same thing. And if you dig into it, you can see what I'm.
Okay, sir. I'll dig into it. Okay. All right. Thank you for your call. Crime, public safety, the justice system. Freewheeling, I guess I asked for it. That's what we're talking about today. Okay. Do you have faith in the justice system? Is it teetering somewhat? Or have you lost faith in the justice system? Is crime getting worse? If you think it's getting worse, what should the government do about it? Okay. We have all kinds of politicians proposing all kinds of remedies. Stop revolving door justice. Do more significant bail reform. Impose mandatory minimum sentences. These sorts of measures. What would you say? Let's stop here. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. And join our discussion, please. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On crime, public safety, and the justice system, do you have faith in the justice system? Do you think crime is getting worse? If it's getting worse, what do you want the government to do? Let's try Joe in Halifax today. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Rob. How are you today?
I'm just great, Joe. Thank you. Hear you just fine, Joe. Go ahead.
Your first part of your question was, do I think crime is getting worse? I do, and I think most people understand that it is. Do I have faith in the justice system? Not very much. I'm not trying to sound negative. I'm just trying to answer them as efficiently as possible. No, I don't. What could the government do about it? I think a good start would be to repeal the Young Offenders Act. I think that's the foundation on which a lot of this crime is beginning to spring off. And a lot of the youth crime is orchestrated by, not all of it, but a lot of it is orchestrated, or some of it is orchestrated by adults, manipulating the system, knowing that children have far less consequences for any crime that they commit. But the crimes in the youth are becoming more severe and more frequent, and they're becoming younger. the perpetrators are becoming younger, as you alluded to earlier in your call. So,
yes.
And I'd like to make a quick comment
about very violent crimes, and sometimes very violent crimes. For example, in the city of Montreal, there was a big news report the other day. City of Montreal, I mean, there's a big spike in murders being committed by young people.
Yeah.
You know, people who would be captured by, it's not called the Young Offenders Act anymore. It's called the Youth Criminal Justice Act, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah.
I stand correct. I stand corrected, but you know what I mean. I think.
Yes, I know what you mean.
A friend of mine and I, a year ago, next month, were attacked and swarmed at a bus terminal here in Halifax. There were a group of youths, probably 7 to 12 of them, attacking a bus driving supervisor who I happen to know. And we came upon him. We came out of the shopping mall and just waved an acknowledgement. And he was bent over away from us and held up his finger like as though to hold on. And we didn't realize he was in distress. As we approached, there were a bunch of kids, and they had been thrown off of one bus, gotten off another, were removed they were trying to remove them from the second bus. And as they did, they attacked the supervisor, who wasn't a driver, but is a mobile unit that drives around attending to different situations in the metro bus system.
Sure.
And my friend and I happened upon it, and my friend tried to avoid the supervisor getting blindsided by this little gal who was going to punch him in the face, and someone pushed him into the young lady, and she turned around and attacked him, and they all swarmed my friend, and they knocked his retina loose and knocked a couple of teeth loose, and he was just covering his face up against the bus. I'm in my mid-70s. He was in his mid-40s. And these kids, apparently, they found out who they were. I was told by a reliable source that they know who they are, but the police seemed apathetic, only because I think their hands are tied when they have to deal with youth like this because of the Young Offenders Act. So they're still aware of it, and nothing has come of it. There's been no conclusion. So, yeah, I think the Young Offenders Act, repealing that act would be a good first step. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. Glad you're well. Why don't we stop here, because the next person up would only have about 30 seconds or so to have their say before we would have to stop anybody. But we are talking about crime, public safety, and the justice system, and whether you have faith in the justice system, or whether your faith is being compromised in the justice system, or whether you have no faith at all. Do you think crime is getting worse? I mean, the latest Crime Severity Index, which was out just last month from Statistics Canada, said crime overall was down last year for 2024. Maybe that doesn't tell the whole story, but what's your sense of it in your community, in your neighborhood? And on the crime situation, Joe says, well, I would start with the Youth Criminal Justice Act, what we used to call the Young Offenders Act. Maybe that needs to be toughened up. There are measures that the government could take to get tough on crime. What would you like to see the government do? Have your say on Talkback today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Our topic of conversation on Talkback today is crime and public safety and the justice system. Right back to our phone calls at 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Paul in Halifax. Thank you for calling, Paul. Good to hear from you today. First-time caller. Thanks for calling,
Hey, great,
Paul.
Rob. Yeah, no, with our country burning, this is just one example, but with our country on fire and all these problems, if you look at the CBC story that was written on July the 22nd, a volunteer fireman in Saskatchewan was charged and found guilty of over 30 fires that he started, and how many more we don't know. And he got 18 months probation and 200 hours community service. That's it.
Wow.
Now,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Take a look at the story. It was by, his name's Logan Simon, and the guy who wrote the story is Alexander Kwan. CBC posted July 22nd, 2025. And you think about that, and for these people in Nova Scotia, a lot of them are listening, I know, that are worried about this $25,000 fine, don't do the crime, you won't get the fine. And, I mean, what did those 30 fires cost the taxpayers in Canada?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And unbelievable to think that that person did not spend 1 day in jail.
Not 1 day in jail.
Not one day. Probation, right off the bat. Arrested, out on probation.
Yeah,
and
isn't that something? Well, I didn't see that story. That's quite
everybody
something.
should read it, and everybody should get a hold of their MLA, and everybody should be outraged.
Right.
I mean,
and
all these people down in Nova Scotia that lost their homes and everything else here 2 years ago, and the catastrophes that are going on in the country now, including our province here. I mean, my God, what does someone like Ford and Polyev, who are, at least sounding the alarm a little bit on this crime and punishment, this revolving door that the Liberals did create. And then an example like that, it just shows you exactly why everything is wrong. My opinion.
So how would you describe your faith in the justice system then?
Zero. I really have a disdain for all of it now. And that's unfortunate because I never used to feel that way. Every day you just hear something more and more and more. Home invasions, break-ins, robberies, assaults, abuse, and people doing nothing about it.
Now, we elect governments to, remedy problems. I mean, what would you, if you wanted action from the government, what kind of action would you like to see?
Well, some of these things that we're spending hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on, if we need more facilities for people, most career criminals start at a very young age, and the two callers back was right about that. Rewrite the Young Offenders Act. And I don't know the Liberal policies, but I know things have definitely got a lot worse. And did I vote originally? Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say I voted for Trudeau the first time. Very embarrassed. But in this situation, I don't think we need more policemen. I don't think we need any of the above. We need better judges and prosecutors to do their job. Not. I don't know. Everybody seems to be working on their own personal agendas these days. We're not working together as a country, that's for sure. And
Thank
to
you for
have
your
people.
call. Oh, sorry. Thank you for your call. I thought you were finished. You mentioned Premier Ford, Mr. Polyev, sounding like they want to be tough on crime. During the same news conference where Premier Ford was railing against the decision to charge this man who had his apartment broken into and he beat up the home intruder, he also pressed for changes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act, what used to be called the Young Offenders Act. He was asked about a story out of the Toronto area, a 16-year-old boy, he was 14 at the time the crimes were committed, let go on bail. He pleaded guilty to 3 charges in connection with a mass shooting in Etobicoke. That's where Premier Ford lives. He lives in Etobicoke. So this guy was 14 at the time. He was facing 2 first-degree murder charges. He was facing 7 charges of attempted murder. Those charges were stayed after he decided to plead guilty. He pleaded guilty to a gun charge, being an accessory after the fact in possession of stolen property. He was in the getaway car at a mass shooting that killed 2 people and wounded scores of others. But here was Premier Ford on the Youth Criminal Justice Act.
We should change the Young Offenders Act. I'll tell you one thing. When I was 16, and every person in this room, when they're 16, they're smart enough to know if you grab a gun and start shooting people, shooting the neighborhood up, or shooting people, and you kill them, you should be in jail. That's one thing I got a pet peeve about. The criminal code is controlled by the federal government. And we have to start holding people accountable, because these people are, these young kids are running around, and they're kids 16 to 18 years old, breaking into homes. You heard about that one family, 8 people showed up to their home, 8 guys, and they pistol whipped the father. The mother had the 1-year-old begging that they don't touch them, ripping the rings off. This is just out of control now here. People have to be held accountable.
That was Premier Ford yesterday on youth crime. Let's go to Dave up next. I believe Dave is in Halifax. Dave?
Yes.
Hi there, Dave.
Yes. Hi, Rob. Thank you for taking my call.
Good to hear from you. My pleasure.
Have you heard the term inmates are running the asylum, and that's what we have going on?
I have heard that phrase before. Yes, I have. Yeah.
The bad guys don't fear the consequences. That's the way I see it. And I think the judicial system is too soft. And when you have that and police out there that don't have the ability to do their jobs and fear doing their jobs because of the reprisals, wearing cams or whatever, it's gotten out of hand. And in my opinion, I think capital punishment should be brought back. That way it could be a deterrent for hard crimes, like really bad crimes. And I like what Trump did down south with the cartels. They are classified as a terrorist organization. I think, Rob, you were talking about this. I've never heard of this ring of extortionists that are in our country right now. That
the Bishnoi gang. Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't they be classified as terrorist organizations? It'll give a little bit more ability to, overthrow these characters. And the inmates who are running the asylum, I have a lot to suggest, Rob, but perhaps I'll be too authoritarian if I offer my opinions on that. But I think
no problem. No problem. Yeah, thank you for your call. I'm totally opposed to the death penalty. Always have been, always will be. I'm pretty firm on that. That's my own position on the death penalty. But be right back. Don't think we need it in the country. But on your faith in the justice system, your experiences with crime, what you're seeing, I'll take those calls for sure today. 1-833-668-2577 on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On crime and public safety and the justice system, Shelley in Calgary up next. Thank you for calling, Shelley. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Rob.
Hi, Shelley. I'm very good, Shelley. Thank you.
Good. I have faith in the justice system. I think that its capacity is what it is. You get charged with a crime these days, and it takes months and months, if not years, before the judicial system has an opening to take you. And I just think that the government needs to give them more funding. And I think one of the police, their hands are tied. Free. I think that there's so much red tape nowadays that these criminals, they know that they're going to get away with it because it'll eventually just kind of fall off the way because it took them 2 years to get to court. And my daughter is actually a criminal defense lawyer, and some of the stuff she talks about is just ridiculous on how long it takes to get anything done. So these things like the firearm restrictions that they're spending like $750 million on, like maybe they should give that to the judicial system and get more judges, get more capacity in there. That's my opinion.
More judges, more crown prosecutors, that sort of thing. Get the system moving faster.
Get it moving. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Capacity issues. Okay. Thank you, Shelley, for your call and for hanging in there. To Brian up next, also in Calgary today. Hello, Brian.
Hello. How you doing, Rob?
Just great, Brian. Thank you. On the justice system and crime and public safety, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we've had politicians try and toughen up the justice system, and the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. So my thoughts are we need to fire all the Supreme Court justices who are so woke that they don't realize that when somebody's multiple murderers, serial killers, that they have a minimum or maximum 25 years in jail, and that they need to have the ability to get parole somewhere in the future, and that to me is just warped. And those justices, they're the ones who are the problem. They should be, in my mind, tarred and feathered and relieved of their duties. It doesn't matter we can talk about the government changing this or making tougher laws, but if they're not going to be enforced and backed up by the Supreme Court, then it's all for naught. It's just a waste of time. So that's my thoughts anyway, is that it comes right down to we've tried to toughen up laws, and the justice system has turned around and said no. They've reversed the laws. So anyway, that's where I would start anyway.
All right, sir. Thank you for sharing your opinion today, Brian. Let's take another call. Who do we want to take next here? How about John? John in Halifax? Yes?
Hey,
John
Rob.
in Halifax. First-time caller. John,
Rob.
yes. Hi, John. Yeah, go ahead.
Listen, last year, I was assaulted by a 30-year-old. I'm 60 years old.
Okay.
I got the better of him. He went down. I thought about kicking him or beating him harder to keep him down. I did not. Well, the young fellow got back up, and I had my hands full. And if I had a chance to do it again, I would have put a pounding on him.
Right. Okay.
Really. Because
okay.
I made it.
And what happened? And what happened after that?
The police came. He was charged. Wasn't charged, but it was just I was assaulted, and I was able to get him down, and I figured that was enough. And I had a chance to keep him down on the ground if I would have beat him more. And I'm sorry I didn't, because he got back up, and I had my hands full.
Mm-hmm.
So I made the wrong choice.
And what provoked this?
It was a construction site, and it was just
right.
And it was. I took a puck in the mouth and gave it back, and I was able to knock him down. And I figured that was over, and I was going to go down and hurt him some more, and I decided not to. I figured it was a responsible thing to do, and sure enough, he got up, and he was a lot more wiry than what I was. I had my hands full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had your hands full. So, do you think anything? Should the criminal justice system have been involved in something like that?
No, that shouldn't have happened. Years ago, things like that shouldn't have happened at all.
Okay.
It's just all I'm saying. That guy that had the intruder into his house, he could have blanked out a little bit. But that guy deserved what he got. That if he's coming to my house, you're staying down.
Okay. Okay. I see where you're going now. Okay. 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 All right. Thank you for your call today. John in Halifax, glad you're okay too. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. As we talk about the criminal justice system today, crime, law and order, public safety. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you have faith in the justice system? Do you think crime is getting worse? And if you think crime is getting worse, what do you want the government to do about it? 1-833-668-2577. Have your say on Talkback today. Miles up next in Calgary on Talkback. Hello, Miles.
How are you?
I'm good, Miles. What would you say, sir? Do you have faith in the justice system?
I would say that I'm losing faith in the justice system.
Okay. And why would you say that?
Well, it seems like crime is definitely, I feel like it's increasing and stuff like that. And I believe that, you know, a lot of people that do end up getting charged for crimes are getting released too soon. And that is allowing them to go back out and recommit crimes. And then, you know, that puts stress on our police officers, that puts stress on the courts and the justice system, because, you know, they're constantly just going through it over and over again.
So what do you think the government should be doing? If you think crime is getting worse, I mean, we elect MPs, we send them to Ottawa. Yeah. That's their purview. The Criminal Code of Canada. What do you want to see the government do?
I think I am a fan of mandatory minimums. I think that would certainly help to a degree, helping keeping some of these repeat offenders off the streets. And maybe in turn that would take some stress off our police officers and stuff like that. But
Right. Yeah, the thing is, you know, judges, lawyers, left-wing groups, they don't like mandatory minimum sentences. When Stephen Harper was the prime minister, for example, he passed a law that if you were caught carrying a loaded, prohibited, or restricted firearm, so a gun that you're not even supposed to have, they find you with it and it's loaded, you're going to prison for 3 years. Minimum.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you do it again, it's going to be 5 years. Okay, this was part of an omnibus crime bill that the Harper government passed in 2008. It was challenged in the courts. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled, well, you can't do that. That is cruel and unusual punishment because people will get caught up in this law, and it will be people who don't deserve to go to prison for 3 years or 5 years. So it'd be very, and that's precedent, right? So it'd be very difficult to pass a law unless you wanted to use the notwithstanding clause or something like that in order to bring back mandatory minimum sentences. But that's the kind of thing you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you are losing faith in the justice system.
I think I'm losing faith. I feel like crime's increasing, and I feel like our system's under extreme stress, and it's just not able to cope with the revolving door of crime these days. So,
right. Okay, Miles. Well, thank you for your call and sharing your thoughts, sir. We'll be digging a little bit more into some actual crime stats in hour number 2 of our program today, but we'll have to stop right here. That's it for hour number 1 of Talkback. A full hour just ahead. More of your calls on this very important topic of crime and public safety, criminal justice system. Certainly been a hot topic all week long here on Talkback. Continuing the conversation today with your help. The latest breaking news is coming up next. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We've been talking about the criminal justice system today, crime, public safety. Asking if you have faith in the justice system, or is it wavering? Is it lost? Whether you think crime is really getting worse where you live. Share your thoughts. What are you seeing? What are you experiencing in your own neighborhood, in your community? If you think crime is getting worse, what do you want the government to do about it? Do you want more police to be hired, new jails built, new prisons built? Mandatory minimum sentences seems to be a popular topic. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. 4 lines available there. The wait won't be too long at all, and we'd love to hear your thoughts today. Lee is in Halifax, first-time caller in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Lee. You're on the air.
Thanks, Rob. How are you doing today?
Just fine, sir. Thank you. Go ahead. What's your opinion?
Excellent. So I just wanted to quickly look at this from a different perspective and get away from the sensationalization of headlines of, I've heard this horrible crime committed by a youth, or I've heard this murder, or whatever. When we look at the Canadian justice system and we look at the way that our prison systems are set up, we can either have a punitive system or a rehabilitation system. The way our jails are set up in Canada right now is to focus on rehabilitation. And when we look at the statistics of crimes, we know that a punitive or punishing somebody for a crime that they've committed doesn't deter future crimes. So we have to look at what we can do to deter those future crimes, and that's why we currently have a rehabilitative system set up. Now, I've heard a lot of talk today about the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and I just want to sort of step back a little bit and just give a little bit of perspective. When we look at youth numbers in the entire country of Canada, we only have 499 youth in youth detention right now at the last census of 2023. So we're talking about a very small percentage of Canadians that are being charged under that act. And that act shows that when somebody is within that act, they normally have some type of psychiatric condition, either ODD, operational defiance disorder, or some other mental cognitive impairment that has led them to that life of crime, and therefore require not punishment, but rehabilitation so that they can be worked back into our society. So I just another way to look at it. I understand that people are scared, and when there's these big sensationalized crimes, it's a gut reaction to want to lock somebody up. And if somebody hurt somebody in my family, I would want retribution as well. But instead of just thinking about retribution, we have to look at it from a little bit of a wider perspective and think, how can we prevent this happening in the future?
Okay, fair enough. But nevertheless, there has been a disturbing trend, certainly since the pandemic. Yeah, I mean, you call them sensationalized stories, but they're troubling stories nonetheless. I, noted in Montreal, big story just in the last week or so about the surge in teen murder cases, for example. I mean, this
Absolutely.
is this is something that we've never really experienced it before. There was the well-known case in Toronto that's pretty much been settled now, where you had 8 teenage girls, none of them older than 16 years old. They swarmed poor Ken Lee, 59-year-old homeless man in Toronto. They're all charged with second-degree murder. I mean, when you count the days that they spent in custody, they barely spent an extra day in prison. And they killed him. They swarmed him and they killed him near Union Station in downtown Toronto. I mean, you say sensational, but serious nonetheless. And what's going on there?
Absolutely. And perhaps that may be an inappropriate application of the Criminal Justice Act. The Justice Act does have a provision now that if you are over the age of 14 and you commit a serious violent act, you can be sentenced as an adult and you can be incarcerated as an adult. And I would suggest that there are situations like that where that would be an appropriate action. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and just give up on the rehabilitation aspect and properly apply, the act when it's necessary.
And one of the other callers mentioned just on the youth crime situation, I would consider some of these young people are probably victims of crime because they're not fully grown adults. They're not fully developed yet, and they're being recruited by adults who are in organized crime rings, and they're committing home invasions and they're stealing high-end vehicles. I'm not sure about the specifics of the law, but maybe that's something that our government should look at. I mean, should that be an aggravating factor in someone's sentence if they're recruiting young people into a life of crime? Is that something that we should look at, for example?
Yeah, and I would definitely support that when we're looking at addressing the person that's recruited the young person in. But obviously, I would not support those youth that have been recruited into a life of crime to receive punishment. I would rather them see counseling and guidance. I mean, there is some punishment, obviously, but counseling and guidance on how to rewire their ways of thinking to prevent them from continuing on with their criminal ways. As you've already alluded to, we know that young people, especially 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, they are just not, they do understand the basis of right and wrong, but they are not cognitively developed to the same level as what an adult would be. And an adult has massive influence and the ability to drastically influence the decisions that they're making. And that's something that we have to remember and take into account. And I don't think that just cracking down on the kids and saying, oh, those darn kids these days have gotten so violent and horrible, we need to start treating them like adults and locking them up and throwing the key is going to actually resolve anything.
Okay, fair enough. Good analysis. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it, Lee, and for hanging in there through the news. 1-833-668-2577. Maybe you disagree with Lee, maybe not. Whatever your opinion happens to be, we're talking about crime, public safety, and the justice system today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
As we talk about crime, law and order, public safety, your faith in the criminal justice system today, I mentioned, the Harper government was a big fan of tough on crime policies. And it firmly believed in the case of gun crime that if you had mandatory minimum sentences for gun crime, there would be a drop in gun crime rates across the country. But several of their laws were challenged and went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the big one was R.V. Nuer, and that was the one that was struck down, that focused on Section 95 of the Criminal Code and did away with the Harper era legislation that you would get 3 years for possessing a loaded, prohibited, or restricted firearm, and 5 years minimum, mandatory minimum. So you're talking hard time, federal time, if you did it a second time. And then, of course, the Harper government was defeated in 2015, and we ushered in the Justin Trudeau era. And the big changes that were made under Prime Minister Trudeau when it came to mandatory minimum sentences were done when David Lametti was the Justice Minister back in 2022. I believe it received a royal assent, and they did away with all kinds of mandatory minimums. They removed mandatory minimum sentences for 14 different firearm-related sentences, some of them to comply with the Supreme Court ruling, but they also repealed mandatory minimum sentences for drug trafficking. Repealed mandatory minimum sentences for the possession for the purposes of drug trafficking. You know, how wise was that? It's one thing to have, you know, a gram of marijuana on somebody back before, you know, marijuana was legal, but you know, drug trafficking, no mandatory minimum sentence for drug trafficking. Some people thought that was a little bit much. It encouraged, you know, if people were found to be charged with simple drug possession, they encouraged alternatives to criminal charges. Maybe that made sense, but they also restored basically unrestricted access to things like conditional sentences, i.e. house arrest. So, you know, the policies have been put in place by various governments. Some have been challenged and ruled to be unconstitutional, cruel, and unusual. Some are questioned, like the Trudeau era ones, because they can be perceived as being soft on crime and maybe contributing somewhat to the crime problem that we have in the country today. Let's go to Danveer in Calgary. Thank you for calling, Danveer. You're on the line, Danveer. Hi there. Hi there. Hi. What would you say, sir, on crime and public safety? Do you have faith in the justice system, sir?
I do, actually.
You do? Okay. All right. And why do you say that?
I think the problem is police budgeting. So, like the police, like every other business, the police, like they also set up their priorities, right? And when they are short on budget, they are having those traffic drives when they could be, like, that's time taken away from other crucial areas, I would say. So if they have money where they don't have to think how to get more, like they should have enough money that they should be thinking where to spend it rather than trying to earn money. Like police is not a business of earning money, right? It should be spending. And I think the biggest problem there is the mayors of the cities, which like they would shout at their highest bids depending on the color. So if it matches with the provincial, they'll shout at the federal. If it matches with the federal, they'll shout at the provincial. But they're not doing their jobs, and like this is where it begins from, right? At the federal level, there should be like mandatory percentage of spending on safety. So the municipalities, like they actually have their financials. They cannot tax people, right? They tax people on behalf.
Well, I mean, let's think about the city that you're in, Danveer. Let's say you're in Calgary, right? You're in Calgary.
Yes.
So big city, large police force. The annual budget for the Calgary Police Service is something like $600 million a year.
600 million?
Do you think you're 600 million? Yeah, so more than $500 million a year to run the Calgary Police Service. Okay.
Okay.
Right? Do you think Like, do you think that's enough? Do you think the police budget should be higher? Should it be hiring more frontline police officers? Do you think it should be redeploying, the way policing is done?
That would be, I think, a decision that the police board or the commissioner, they have to make.
Right.
So if they, if like when they took away those cameras a few months back, so they were a shortfall of what, 20 million? Hello?
Okay. Yeah, you're cracking up there, Danvir, so we're going to have to let you go. The connection's not great, sir. Sorry, it sounds like you're on the road today. Be right back. Crime, public safety, the justice system. Do you have faith in the justice system? Is crime getting worse? If it's getting worse, what do you want the government to do about it? There are all kinds of ideas out there. 1-833-668-2577. And have your say on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Curtis in Kitchener up next, joining the conversation as we talk about crime and public safety in the justice system today. Hi there, Curtis. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Hi, Rob. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
I just want to... Yeah, I pretty much agree with the majority of the callers. Definitely, since Trudeau came in, as you were just saying before commercials in your last caller, they've definitely put a monkey wrench into, the whole justice system. And I think that should be repealed. I think that if not, put it back to the way it was. Never mind this home arrest crap. If they're, got balls enough to come into your house, then they're, saying you have to stay home isn't going to be good enough, for one thing. And not just that, but get tougher on it. Like you said, adults are, getting these youngsters to do this because they do get a lighter sentence or a lighter, prosecution.
Yeah.
It's not just the fact the adults should have even more of a punishment.
Yeah.
And then,
why would we steal the car? Why would we steal the car? Let's get the 14-year-old to join the gang and he'll steal the car.
Exactly.
Why would we break into the house? Let's get a bunch of 14-year-olds and they'll go break into the house for us.
Exactly.
And they can carry guns and they can carry knives and they can wear masks and everything else. And then they're not coming after us. And and the 14-year-old, what's the 14-year-old going to get?
No,
Counselor?
exactly. It's nothing. They get the love from the family, their gang, and that's all they're striving for to begin with. And on the Lindsay issue. I find it funny that, and I don't mean funny, but do you find it kind of weird that, we're expected to know exactly what to do in the heat of the moment and not go out of bounds of what the law says, yet police officers, for example, are trained to be able to do that in the heat of the moment reactions. They just don't get on the force and know how to deal with something that all of a sudden comes in their face like that without doing the wrong thing. Okay, so I think that's a lot to expect from a regular citizen.
I'm going to be very interested. I'm going to be very interested to see how that plays out if it ever sees the inside of a courtroom, if it ever advances that far, and whether this. I mean, the police say, "Well, we don't know the whole story, and we have details that you don't have," and obviously the perpetrator of the break-in is in a bad way. They had to airlift him to the hospital, but are they really going to make these charges stick against this guy?
That's the thing. I don't think so. I think when more and more details comes, like again, be tried by a jury. Like I said, rather be held accountable or whatever by 12, but instead of carried by 6. That's absolutely the way I would go if it was me. But again, I think the mentality behind how are they wording it? Like, not going overboard with what you do when you're all of a sudden woken up, you're not in your right state of mind, you're half asleep, whatever, you're scared out of your mind, you don't know what you're in for. I mean, how can they expect a regular citizen to react according to the law?
The language in the law is the response in that case in self-defense has to be reasonable and proportionate, but You know, to your point, if you have a stranger in your apartment at 3:00 in the morning, who's acting rationally or reasonably after being?
How do you know? Yeah, how do you know even what's proportionate at the time? Because what if you have a witness to weapon yet, but you think they might, and you assume they do? You know, you don't know what they're there for. Are they just there to take your car? Or are they there to actually harm your family? So I think it's unreasonable, personally. I really do feel like that's unreasonable, and it should be looked into more in depth. And not just like, you know, because now nobody thinks they can defend themselves. And I think that's just outrageous.
I'm just wondering, you know, in the whole discussion, thank you for your call, in the whole discussion about crime and punishment in the justice system, whether that's a tipping point that we've reached.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about the criminal justice system today, asking you if you have faith in the justice system, whether your faith in the justice system is wavering, whether you've lost faith in the justice system, asking about crime where you live. Do you think it's getting worse? If you think it's getting worse, I mean, this is why we elect governments, you know, at all levels of government, to deal with crime and public safety, municipal governments, provincial governments, and the federal government. One of the reasons why we wanted to get back into this topic today is because of the overwhelming response that we had to this story out of Lindsay, Ontario, yesterday in the Peterborough area, where you had this guy asleep in his apartment. It's 3:00 in the morning, Monday morning. Imagine this guy's asleep at 3:00 in the morning. It's Monday morning. In a few hours, he's probably going to get up and go to work. But instead, some guy breaks into his apartment and a fight breaks out. He confronts the intruder, and the intruder was beaten so badly, he's beaten to within an inch of his life. He had to be airlifted to the hospital. Police show up. You know, the guy who broke into the apartment he's wanted on other charges. He's out on probation, and he is facing charges. Still in the hospital, but he's charged with break and enter, possession of a weapon. So had a weapon on him, mischief, and failure to comply, which you see all the time. Failure to comply, either with probation or failure to comply. You know, breach of conditions is another popular one that you'll see from the police, meaning they're out on bail. You know, when you're out on bail, you're supposed to be a good little boy or a good little girl. But quite often, they're not good little boys and good little girls waiting for Sunday school. And they go out and they get in trouble again. So you see that all the time. Breach of condition. So, 41-year-old guy is in the hospital, broke into the wrong apartment. The twist of the whole story, of course, was that the guy who's renting the apartment and is asleep in his bed at 3:00 in the morning and gets awakened by a complete stranger. Because he beat him so badly, he's charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. Right? So many calls on that story yesterday. We didn't fit everybody in, and it prompted much reaction from the political sphere. And leading the charge again was Ontario Premier Doug Ford. This is what he said about the Lindsay case yesterday.
About the story in Lindsay? So this criminal that's wanted by the police breaks into this guy's house. This guy gives him a beating, and this guy gets charged. And the other guy gets charged. But something is broken. I know if someone breaks into my house or someone else's, you're going to fight for your life. This guy has a weapon. You're going to use any force you possibly can to protect your family. Or violence and breaking into people's homes, putting guns to their head. And guess what? Some bleeding heart judge, little Johnny, he didn't have a good upbringing. So we're going to let him out on bail 5 more times because he's on his 5th, being let out on bail 5 times, just to go do the same thing the next day. I'll tell you one thing, I get more calls than anyone in the country. People are done with this. They're absolutely done. They're finished. You should be able to protect your family when someone's going in there to harm your family and your kids. You should use all resources you possibly can to protect your family. And maybe these criminals will think twice about breaking into someone's home.
So that wasn't the first time that Doug Ford talked like that and expressed support for what was called the castle doctrine or stand your ground law. The last time he was talking like that was back in June. That was related to a case in Vaughan, which is just north of Toronto. Guy had a Lamborghini parked in his driveway. Thieves tried to steal the Lamborghini. The guy comes out of the house and he starts shooting at the thieves. And it's the guy who's charged with a whole host of firearms related offenses because he didn't properly store the firearm. He's charged with discharging a firearm, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, careless storage, and a whole bunch of other charges. And the premier rushed to his defense and said, this is why we need castle laws in this country. Let's play that clip, Curtis.
Did you hear about the guy that these thugs came up, ready to steal his car? They're all in their masks and everything. So I guess he was a hunter or something. He shot up in the air. I don't recommend that, by the way. But he gets charged. I got to find out this guy's name and number, and I'm going to hold a fundraiser for lawyer fees for him. He should get a medal for standing up. It's like down in the U.S., we should have the castle law. Someone breaks into your house, and I know any of these people here, someone breaks in your house, and they're coming after your kids, and you're coming after your spouse, you're going to fight like you've never fought before. You're going to use anything that you have, be it weapons, baseball bats, knives. You're protecting your family. These thugs shouldn't be coming in there.
And then today, the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, who just yesterday had a whole event in Surrey, British Columbia about being tough on crime, but never brought this up and wasn't asked about it, surprisingly, put a post on social media that says, your home, your family, your life. If someone breaks in, you deserve the right to defend your loved ones and your property. Full stop. More than 8,000 likes and almost 700 comments. And it was only posted about 2 hours ago. So the politicians are weighing in on the crime situation and the state of our criminal justice system. We want to hear from you today here on Talkback. I'm Rob Snow, 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about the criminal justice system today, whether you have faith in the justice system. Is crime getting worse? If it is, what should the government do about it? Dawn in Calgary up next. Hi, Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, my pleasure. Go ahead. What would you say, Dawn?
A couple things. I'm very much in favor of the castle law.
Right.
And,
okay.
And at the same time, we have to not prejudge everything. We kind of tend to do that. How do you know the guy that was sleeping wasn't a predator? So there's always a backstory to things, but we automatically sensationalize, the guy that was sleeping was innocent. Maybe he was, but just saying that we shouldn't jump to conclusions.
Fair enough.
And crime, and people are done. We're fed up. But are we really? The predators that are online that are grooming the young people, they're desensitizing them. They're teaching them how to be violent. They're teaching them how to swarm. They're teaching them and grooming them. If we're really done with it, unplug the internet?
Well, okay. I don't think that's very realistic. You don't really believe we can do that? Unplug the internet, right?
No, but I'm saying we have to start taking on the responsibility for our children and how they're raised and what goes into their little brains. And there's so much distraction and there's so much desensitizing going on. It's really scary.
Okay.
I don't know what the
again, I mean, that, right. Well, this is where, government legislation can come into effect.
Yeah, like Australia and the others that have made, like the parent controls and different things. But they still find
yes,
a way.
some countries have moved to impose, for example, to your point, age limits on social media.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting point that you raised. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Don. Yeah. And on your point, about, well, do we know the whole story? And Lindsay, no, we don't know the whole story. And the police issued a statement yesterday saying we know more than you do. We haven't released all the details to the public, and we'll see what happens as that case progresses. It has certainly touched a nerve, though, with a lot of people. Let's go to Tom in Cambridge is up next. Tom. Hi, Tom. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
That if you have to defend your family or yourself or everything. I don't think you have the time to say, well, I think I hit him enough. You just want to get rid of the guy alone. So why are we charging this guy? This doesn't make sense. Same thing with that 18-year-old guy that killed the father with the 3 kids. I mean, he had a record, and you get 30 days.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that particular story.
I mean, this is crazy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
I think
with the self-defense law, the reason that he's facing charges, I explained this yesterday, is because it's in the law. It has to, and you can defend yourself, but your response to the force must be reasonable and proportionate, right? But as you say, in the moment at 3 o'clock in the morning with somebody in your apartment, are you really thinking, well, is what I'm doing reasonable? Is what I'm doing proportionate? Or do you just want to get this guy out? Or do you just want to neutralize this threat?
This is it. Either way.
Yeah. Either way.
Okay,
yeah.
And it's not your fault. I mean, this is crazy. Stupid as law. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah. Let's go to Art in Calgary. Hi, Art.
How you doing, sir?
Very good, sir. Thank you for calling. Your opinions, please.
Yeah. So I want to put 2 things in front of you. The first one is if we look at other places, which, sometimes we're looked to, sometimes we look out. The U.S., most states have the 3-strike law, if third time, maximum sentence, automatic jail and maximum sentence. There's a lot of complaining, as Tom or as Ford put it, bleeding heart judges letting a guy out on nothing. If you are convicted of a violent crime in a lot of places and you're either out on bail or probation or you have a criminal history of violent crime, it's automatic max sentence and it's automatic jail, not probation. I think what has to happen in Canada, one of the first things that has to happen is repeat offender rules need to change. And in that context, take some of that quote unquote bleeding heart away from the judges, and where it becomes, you know what, you did it 3 times. It's not my decision now. You decided to go to this route. You get the maximum sentence. Have a nice day. As far
so
as
you would support something
law,
like a 3 strikes you're out law, a 3 strikes you're out
100%,
law, right?
100%.
100%.
And as far as the castle law goes, we sort of have it. It's very hard to be measured, but I can tell you this. I agree with what the other fella had said. I will be judged by 12 before I'm carried by 6.
Oh, yeah, that was yesterday. Yeah, that was Emerson's call yesterday.
Yeah, if you're defending, if I'm defending my family, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Pierre Poilievre was proposing something like a 3 strikes you're out law during the election campaign, but it was more around getting bail or probation or parole or house arrest, that if people committed 3 serious offenses, they wouldn't be allowed to. They automatically bail would be denied. They wouldn't be allowed to get promoted.
CBC did this. One of the news products did a documentary where they interviewed criminals, and it was a common question: what deters you? What keeps you from doing anything? And it was common across the board. The penalties here are so lax, I just don't even worry about it. That's the problem.
All right.
When the criminals just don't care.
Sure.
We're not tough enough.
Yeah. Well, it's a big problem if people lose faith in the justice system as well, I would put it to you. We'll be right back on News Radio.
something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Thank you for all of your calls today. We talked about crime, public safety, and the justice system. It's been such a hot topic all week long. We couldn't resist coming back to it today. Let's go to Keith in Turner Valley. Hi, Keith.
Yes, good afternoon, Rob.
Yes. Share your thoughts, please.
I have a tendency to believe that the justice system is a business.
A business, okay.
It's a very, very, very expensive business. And during the past few years, there's been a lot of empire building within the justice system. I'll give you an example. A few years back, we would see in the rural areas one corporal, RCMP member, manning the detachment. Today, that number from one has gone to a commissioned officer in charge overall, a staff sergeant in charge as part of the crew, and an NCO or an officer that has corporal or sergeant status there, and 5 or 6 or 7 regular members that do the field work. So It's been an escalating process with a huge price tag that the taxpayers are picking up. And
Sure.
I think that it's got to a point where there's an extravagance there that's not being overseen by anyone who has an authority over the justice and policing system, where, if there's a need for change, that change can be introduced. It seems to be operating on its own and escalating.
But has it the increase in resources, Keith? Sorry, just because we're a little tight on time, has it improved community safety at all? That's a dramatic increase in resources.
No, definitely not, Rob. It's getting worse. As a matter of fact, there seems to be less efficiency amongst all those policemen. Like, we've got county police, we've got sheriffs, we've got a number of different organizations that are all falling under the umbrella of police. And it's really an expenditure that the general public is picking up. It's gone beyond a normal situation. And
look, thank you very much, Keith. We'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much. Empire building. I love that term. That's such an Ottawa term. Empire building. That's our time for today. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is our Friday free for all. Talkback, so we'll follow your lead tomorrow. Be happy to do it as well. Let's bring you the latest breaking news coming up next. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.